Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is my Forbes colleague, money and politics reporter, Kyle Conn-Mullins. Kyle, thanks so much for joining me.
Always great to be here, Brittany. Thanks for having me.
It is always great to have you, and you are kicking off the year with some new reporting about Rumble and its founder and CEO. So, as we dive into the conversation today, first give us a little brief history of what is the YouTube alternative Rumble.
So, Rumble is, like you said, first and foremost, a YouTube alternative. It's a place where people can post videos, live stream themselves, and it's a growing tech company. I think that they would tell you they are also an alternative to other companies. For example, they're an alternative to Twitch, which is owned by Amazon. That's one of the biggest live streaming platforms on the internet, other than YouTube. They would say they're an alternative to Twitch. They would also say they're an alternative to Amazon Web Services. AWS is the biggest services provider on the internet, and Rumble now has its own cloud service. So they would say, look, we are the founder, Chris Pavlovski, he's described it as a mini Google. Now, they don't have a search engine, but other than that, they are trying to be kind of a one-stop shop for lots of different things across the internet.
It's a growing tech company. It's more than a decade old, but talk to us a little bit about how it has gained prominence.
Yeah, it was started initially as a YouTube alternative that would help small creators who struggled with things like rights management on the platform, and with monetizing themselves on the platform. Because YouTube's tools, especially in the early 2010s, weren't that great about this. They've made a lot of improvements and changes since then. But Rumble really presented itself as like, look, we're really good if you're a small creator just trying to get started on the internet, and we can help you license out your content to other websites. And YouTube didn't really have any of that machinery way back in the day when it was founded. Forward, though, to 2020, and a couple of conservatives, prominent conservatives, including Republican Congressman at the time, Devin Nunes, he's now the CEO of True Social. Devin Nunes was skeptical because he thought that he was being censored on it. He was being shadow banned and being suppressed on the platform. So he got in touch with Rumble and he said, what if I just started moving all of my video content over my podcast and the stuff that my office is posting? What if I moved it all over to Rumble? And Rumble said, sure. And that quickly started this deluge of conservatives that were aggrieved with one way or another with YouTube, all moving over to Rumble. And so Rumble saw its monthly active users explode during 2020. They went from about 1 million users in the second quarter to 20 million users by the fourth quarter. And you started to see their tilt show up. You started to see video talking about election anomalies and tabulating vote counts in Pennsylvania. And this was around the time that Donald Trump was promoting the idea that he'd stolen, Joe Biden had stolen the election in 2020. So that's when you start to see this shift. And that's when Rumble really starts to become prominent on the right side of the political spectrum.
It's really interesting. It started as a place for smaller creators because now there are huge names in politics, especially famous right figures. Who are they, and who are some of the other apolitical figures on Rumble as well?
Yeah, I think it's important to note you'll see Rumble referred to a lot of as like a right-wing YouTube. I think we even called it that a couple times in our story. That's not 100% of what they are. That they are very prominent. They have a lot of very big conservative commentators. People like Dan Bongino, who's actually also an investor in Rumble. People like Donald Trump Jr., Kimberly Guilfoyle, Steve Bannon. These folks are really making a living on Rumble as conservative commentators. But there's also very apolitical stuff on there. Rumble has really tried to expand beyond just politics and news. So if you go on Rumble, you'll see gaming streamers and video game content. You'll see sports stuff. They have a partnership with a combat sports league called Power Slap, which is a kind of a WWE, but it's focused entirely on slapping. They recently signed a deal with Barstool Sports, Dave Portnoy, Barstool Sports. That's a pretty apolitical site. So overall, I would say you have this this platform that is trying to expand outside of this conservative niche that made it popular in the first place.
I want to talk a little bit about money now. Can you talk to us about how Rumble's worth ballooned since it was founded over a decade ago, and how much cash has it raised in the past 11 years?
So we can track the value of Rumble going up over several different fundraising rounds, right? Its first big injection of cash was in 2021. Was a venture capital investment that I think we're going to talk a little bit more about. But that was $25 million at a valuation of about $500 million. That was already a big jump, right? This is after Rumble's viewership has soared during the 2020 pandemic, election, all that stuff. Fast forward about a year, and Rumble goes public via a SPAC deal. They now have $300 million plus in cash in their bank account, and they were worth upwards of $2 billion. Today, their market cap is over $3 billion. So you can really track the valuation going up. And then additionally, I should note, they just had this big deal with Tether that valued the company, it injected about $775 million investment into the company, including about a little over $200 million in cash. So that's going to help stabilize their balance sheet a little bit, which I know we're going to talk about as well.
I know you hinted at it in your comment before, but can you talk to us a little bit about JD Vance's, the vice president-elect, his involvement in Rumble? How did that happen?
Absolutely. That first $25 million, that money, which gave Rumble the ability to open a new headquarters, it gave them the ability to buy up a couple of smaller tech companies that and incorporate their stuff into their platform. That money came from Narya, which is a venture capital firm that was co-founded by JD Vance. And JD Vance did this with the financial support from Peter Thiel, right-wing billionaire, got his money from PayPal originally. And so JD Vance is really tied up in the beginnings of Rumble as a bigger company. He was reportedly a pretty big figure in the original, in that deal between Narya and Rumble. And he, afterwards, he continued to manage that relationship up until he ran for Senate. And when he ran for Senate, he divested himself from, and when he won his Senate seat, I should say, he divested himself from Narya. He's no longer at the firm. He does still own part of Narya, or part of their investment fund. So through that, likely owns a stake in Rumble. However, it's kind of like owning an ETF at this point. He doesn't have any control over what it invests in.
Rumble has no problem spending cash. You reported that pretty clearly. You see that in their high-profile deals with the creators on there. And you have this chart in your reporting about Rumble's spending versus their revenue. And there's a pretty big separation there in that graph. But despite its popularity, you reported last month that 2025, this year, will likely be a do-or-die year for Rumble. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so you can see after Rumble goes public via that SPAC deal in late 2022, their strategy, they had all this cash, over $300 million in cash. And so they said, well, our strategy is basically going to be, we're going to sign these very lucrative deals with all sorts of people to make Rumble their platform. And so regardless of whether they're getting fewer views than they were on YouTube or whether, what metrics they're hitting, we're going to guarantee that they're going to make a certain amount of money. Now, we don't know exactly what all these deals look like. They don't disclose any of this. So we don't know how much they were paying Donald Trump Jr. to be on the platform, Kimberly Guilfoyle, Dan Bongino, Steven Crowder, all these conservative commentators, or the gaming and sports creators that they've also signed these big deals with. However, we do know, based on their public SEC filings, that the cash was going out the door at an unsustainable rate. They burned through about 2/3 of that cash in 2 years. So by the end of 2024, they had burned through nearly $200 million. And that was actually just by the third quarter of 2024. So we don't even know the numbers for the last quarter. And so they were kind of in a situation where they had about a little over $100 million left. What were they going to do next? Because their revenues were not keeping up with their expenses. They were shoveling money out the door, but it wasn't showing up in the revenue figures, and it wasn't showing up in the user figures either. And so that's why 2025 was going to be this do or die moment for Rumble. And so we published the story showing this. You can see it in the chart there. They were actually their net losses every month or every quarter were larger than their revenues, excuse me. And then they were saved.
And then they were saved, almost a Christmas miracle for Rumble. At the end of December there, they received a huge investment to the tune of $775 million. Talk to us about this cash infusion. Where did it come from?
The cash infusion came from Tether. Tether is this big crypto company. They are known most for operating the most commonly used stable coin. It's a cryptocurrency that's tied very, very closely to the US dollar. The whole point is that one unit of its stable coin is one US dollar. So they're a very big crypto company, and they plowed a bunch of money into Rumble. About a third of that money is going to be used just to stabilize Rumble's balance sheet. So they now have several $100 million more to use to continue to sign these very lucrative deals, trying to get those user figures up, those revenue numbers up. But the rest of it is going to be used to buy back a huge chunk of their stock. And so they're going to reward investors for doing that, for being a part of the company.
Kyle, is there any indication of why Tether, a cryptocurrency company, would invest so much money into Rumble?
They presented it as an ideological good fit. So in the statement that went out accompanying the deal, the head of Tether said, look, I have a quote here, we want to promote freedom, and we want to challenge existing centralized systems. And that's what cryptocurrency is doing in the financial space, right? They see themselves as challenging big players in the financial industry on Wall Street, the big established banks, the Federal Reserve, the US dollar. They're trying to take all of that down, or they're trying to, challenge those companies into working and operating differently. Rumble sees itself in a similar way. They're trying to challenge big tech companies, YouTube, AWS, Twitch. They're trying to challenge them to operate in a different way as well. And so these companies, they say, like, we're for freedom of expression, we're for freedom of speech, we're for decentralizing things. So the way they present it is it's an ideological good fit.
And this $775 million investment was not only good news for Rumble, it was really good news for Rumble's founder and CEO, Chris Pavlovski. Who is he?
Yeah, Chris Pavlovski got a little bit, like you said, a little bit of a big Christmas gift over the holidays. Chris Pavlovski, he found, like you said, founder of Rumble, son of Macedonian immigrants who immigrated to Canada. He grew up on the internet. He's an early internet entrepreneur. He was building websites in his teen years, which was right around the dot-com bubble. His first couple big successes, he had a company called Jokeroo, which was a kind of similar to early Rumble, actually. People would upload these spammy, funny videos, and he would enable them to license that out to other media outlets that wanted to play those videos. And he also founded this company called Cosmic Development, which used his ties back to his parents' home country of Macedonia. And it's an IT outsourcing firm, essentially. So tech companies in the US, in Canada, can hire Cosmic Development, and that they'll help with their IT needs. They've got offices in North Macedonia and in Serbia. And so that was one of his first big companies. They're also they work with Rumble. Rumble is one of their big clients. And then he founded Rumble, and he's been kind of on this train ever since.
And you're reporting he is now a billionaire. How so?
Yeah, after Tether put all this money into Rumble, Rumble's stock price exploded. It more than doubled in just a couple of days at the very end of December. And after Christmas, it peaked at around $16 a share. It's a little bit below that now. But that pushed Pavlovski's stake in Rumble. He owns about 25% of the company, and he also owns options to acquire even more of the company. So that combined stake was over $1 billion just in and of itself. So putting aside his stake in Cosmic Development, putting aside his other work and any real estate and other assets that he owns, his stake in Rumble alone was worth more than $1.3 billion at the time.
Come January 20th, as we know, we will have a Republican-controlled House, Senate, and White House. And that sounds like that would be good news for a company like Rumble, which has been touted and described as a right-wing YouTube. So what's next for Pavlovski and Rumble in 2025?
So they have a couple of things coming in 2025. First thing, like you said, is they are going to have a friendly government administration, an ideologically, compatico government administration for the first time since they went public. Right? They've only been public under the Biden administration so far, and the Biden administration has historically taken a little bit less friendly of a view toward very, very conservative commentators like the ones that are popular on Rumble's platform. But with that said, they've also got some other stuff coming up. They have a big antitrust suit against Google that's supposed to go to trial in 2025. That's coming up. They think, Rumble would say, that their business has been really hurt by various anti-competitive practices by Google. Google denies this, of course, and so they are seeking restitution and damages against the company, and that's another really big piece of their strategy is they're trying to take down big tech, not just by outcompeting them, but also by suing. So we'll see what happens there.
Kyle, an exciting year ahead. Thank you so much for your reporting. I look forward to many conversations in 2025.
Absolutely. Happy New Year, Brittany. Great to be here.